idea is to give you a summary and, let me say, first finding on the startup ecosystem in Europe. I already mentioned something about myself and my perspective on it. So it's quite investment focused perspective on it. We did within the EU for Agri project, we did a survey on Agri-Apps. It was a quite deep dive into the sector. Here on this slide, you can see an overview of the worldwide agricultural startups, early stage and later stage, shown in CB Insights 2017. It's around 100 to 150 startups that are shown there. We have got 9 segments where we put the startups in there, from farm management software to smart irrigation and next-gen farms. You see that on the slides. Only 2 years later now, I was trying to get some latest figures on that. So we see that we have got around 250 startups in the ag-tech sector at the moment within the European Union. And when we have a look abroad, I found at least 1,100, 1,200 startups. So in fact, what we see is that there is, a game-changing period at the moment. Very lots and lots of startups are coming to the market. Lots of them are only in the very first stages, just founded or in the stage of proof of concept. So many of them were founded 2016, 2017 and later. What I try to do is to give you some learnings. I have to say that we are just in the middle of the project, so it's half time, so it's not the final conclusion. But there are some early learnings we have at the moment. They are based on about 50 to 55 startups that I was really in contact with. I met a lot of them, and some of them I really did kind of due diligence from an investment perspective. So this is the data behind my first finding. And the first learning is I had a look at the stage, and which stage is a typical startup in the ag-tech sector. And as I mentioned before, many of them are really very, very young. So that means that they are in an early stage phase. We call that proof of concept stage, where the founders try to find this product market fit, do lots of demos. What we rarely see in this early stage startups is that they don't have scalable service in place at the moment. So as Emmanuel mentioned before, I think there is a quite big gap from having these demos, this proof of concept, to as we say, proof of market or market fit, where they have a business model and where you really see that there is a scalable business behind. I think this is a quite big milestone, hard to achieve. And there's something probably where you can find a gap between these early stage startups and the later stage startups. They really show that they can scale their business. So this is something that really I think it's necessary to mention that. I asked lots of them what is their business model, or what is at least the idea of their business model when they are in the early stages. So many of them have the farmer in mind. So the farmer as a client. Very often the farmer as the user that should pay for their services. And I'm not really convinced about this business model, because when you look at the agricultural structure around Europe, we have a very small size structure out there. Many small farmers. Not really a high amount of big companies out there. So for this reason, I'm in doubt whether this is really the best way to see the farmers as paying clients and paying members of the services. I also had and look, not too deep, but I had a look at the existing accelerator programs. which is early stage. So where we find the founders with a vision and help them to get their first products for proof of concept. When I compared with my other experience in other segments, I could say that there is a lack of accelerator programs in AgTech. I was very surprised that obviously even in Germany there is no AgTech accelerator, no focused AgTech accelerator in place at the moment. I was invited a couple of months ago that to be mentor in one of these accelerators to come, but even this initiative is not really good funded, so I'm not pretty sure if this really could take place in the next couple of months or the next year. So what I see is that there's a lack of this early stage programs. The next slide is something about funding. I was really trying to get as much figures as I could. Lots of them based on platforms like Crunchbase. You see it in the slide. There is what we see is there is lots and lots of funding starting in Q2 2016, Q1 2017. There is kind of hockey stick where really a lot of funding rounds occurred. In the whole AgTech sector shown at Crunchbase, we've got more than 1,000 funding rounds overall, and lots of them in the last 2 years. The total funding amount, almost $4 billion US dollars. So it's quite a huge amount of money in the sector. But what I learned when I did this deep dive, that there is a quite big difference between startups within the European community, within the European Union and abroad. We see that lots and lots of really big fundings from privately owned VCs in countries like the US, probably also Switzerland. As I saw quite big funding rounds in UK, Ukraine, also Israel. But within the EU, I see really the focus on very small funding rounds compared with abroad. So it brings me to a kind of conclusion that that this sector is in the European Union is not so attractive to private investors, and was trying to search whether there are privately held VCs with this Earth observation and AgTech focus within or with the focus of the European Union. And I see that this is only a few working on that. We've got 300 investors in Europe in these sectors. The biggest ones coming from European community programs, so more than 10% out of Horizon 2020 European Investment Fund, and it is a lack of privately owned VCs in this sector. I had some discussion with investors that are in different sectors and also in AgTech, and I asked them why they are not really focusing on investments in the European Union. And what I get as a feedback is that it's quite hard to see that the sector that is really relying on subsidies and public grants could get to a milestone of proof of market in a quite short time. So everybody's really fearing that if the subsidies are not coming in the way that they are proposed, that's probably hard for a startup to get in this later stage where they could really live, let me say it like this, without relying on public grants. We in EU for Agri, the CAP reform is the main topic. We wanted to learn whether these startups have an idea what is going on with the CAP reform 2020, and what was really shown in all these meetings I had, that there is a lack of awareness of the CAP reform. I think in all these discussions I had with this more than 50 startups I was in contact with, hardly someone knows that the cap reform is going into the monitoring topic, and this was not really on their radar, to be honest, and this was quite surprising. And I asked them whether they are in contact with paying agencies or with authorities in their countries. And what I learned there is that they are hardly in touch with them. What I get as feedback is that there are high requirements to meet the standards of a supplier for let me say, paying agencies. You have to be in the market for quite some years to be a supplier for this public projects. And they are not they don't get any invitations to tenders from this side. So it's hard for them to get in touch. Some told me that it's even hard for them to get a chance to do their demos. Because they don't find anybody that helps them getting the proof of concept done. To summarize this at the end is the EU for Agri is as a project here to analyze all the information we get about all these IT initiatives in agriculture, and we try to focus on the opportunities we get from these game-changing on the satellite business. We are now in the midterms of the project, so it's a preliminary conclusion of the market potential that we can give at the moment, but it's still unclear for us what is the outcome. But from my personal perspective, I would say that there is a problem with a quite low engagement of private investors in this sector, especially within the European Union. In EU for Agri, we try to monitor the sectors, at least for the next 12 months within the project. And at the end, we also want to give some recommendations for funding strategies and probably some ideas how we could focus on bringing private equity into the segment.
There seems to be in Europe a very, as you said, lots of small farmers, and it's difficult to communicate the value of EO. You know, the very maybe traditionalist. They don't necessarily see, you know, this high tech gadgets. It's very difficult. They're all sort of, as you said, many small farmers, so it's difficult to get kind of scale. Whereas in the US, they seem to be more open to using technology. There's a cooperative. There's a lot of data analysis. So do you have any, Martin, sort of experience with the US side, which is one part of the question? And the second question was, how would you sort of overcome this reluctance from farmers? So how would you communicate the value to sort of increase the uptake in the European agriculture sector?
That's not easy, not so easy to answer, because I don't have the really clue on that. But starting with the first question, I was asking my colleagues on the investment side why they are investing in North and South America when they are doing ag-tech investments, and they all said that it's quite easy for them finding partners for the first step, proof of concept. You've got big farms, they are well organized, they have enough budget, they see the value, they see the value at least at the end of the day with more yield, more revenues on that. So it's quite easy for them to sell that. And asking them why this is so tricky within the European Union, the feedback is always the same. Most of the European Union farmers are really relying on subsidies. So this is something where really they are focused on. So they do everything they can to optimize their subsidies. This is, I think we don't want to hear that, but it's very often the case when you're talking with these small, medium-sized farmers. So they have to optimize their business by optimizing the subsidies. And this is quite tricky when you come with new offerings, when you tell them whatever will be in the future. But yeah, they are all focused on optimizing subsidies from the paying agencies. So I think this is at least a challenge. That leads me to my personal conclusion that the farmers they have to get these services for free. We have to find other parties and stakeholders that are willing to pay for the services. There are insurance companies. There are paying agencies that could be partners of many of these services, and there approximately are some other ag tech big companies that are really willing to pay if they get data that could be helpful for them and for their business, but not the farmers. At least not the mid-sized and small-sized farmers. I had a big surprise when I was doing my survey that there is no knowledge about cap reform, about monitoring, and all that. What's going on there? Nobody knows what is changing out there at the satellite business. So for this reason, I'm pretty sure that also the EU4Agri project is a milestone on this to help the community knowing what it's going on there, and probably this is also a necessary step to get us to get forward. But at the end, the question is who pays for that. This is always the question we have. There's not a problem of startups only. It's also for all these small and medium enterprises out there. You have to ask this question, and you have to get an idea who is willing to do that. And I think the knowledge and all these opportunities you see out there is one thing. Knowing this is the next thing, but the willingness to pay for it, I'm not sure how this could work from the perspective of the farmers.